Hi, I understand you have some concerns about your child's ADHD diagnosis and wanted to talk to you about that. I completely recognize that you are the expert on your child and that some of the stuff that you might have heard might not be something you're comfortable with or, something you really wanted to hear. But even if you are completely sold on the diagnosis, I want you to still feel comfortable that with me as your child's teacher and that, want to make sure that we have a great year. So just a little bit about myself. I was never diagnosed until adulthood back in, 2019. But as I learned more about what it all means, I realized that many of the struggles that I had as a student could have been better understood with a little bit of a different perspective from my parents or from my teachers. I think that the stigma attached to a diagnosis wasn't something that my mom felt comfortable with, but as a parent of a child of ADHD, or as a parent of an ADHD child myself, I think understanding what the diagnosis really means has helped me understand my daughter so much better, especially in how we respond to some of the, common ADHD behavior. And I think it should be said that, the opinions and, stigma that may have been attached to it in the past isn't shared by anybody in the educational field or in the psychology field. I would even say that the terminology contributes to much of the stigma. Calling it attention deficit suggests that somebody like myself or your child or my daughter or anybody else like us that, has an inability to pay attention or, we're too scatterbrained. And we may have wandering attention sometimes. We may have, hyperfixation or hyperfocus on certain things that we're really interested in. And it can complicate things in the classroom and at home or at work, but it doesn't mean that we're incapable of learning. It doesn't mean we're incapable of excelling. So contrary to that, it's been suggested by Columbia University that there's an evolutionary advantage of many of the traits that individuals with ADHD have. Adaptability, heightened sense of awareness, inclination towards exploration, the ability to quickly shift focus would have been extremely advantageous to humanity when we were, in our hunter-gatherer stage a few thousand years ago. But in the context of the modern world, we get painted in a bad light because of the, emphasis on structure and the emphasis on obedience and things like that. But I think that, very likely humanity is where we are because of, the people that were adaptable and curious and, that went and tried to accomplish, great things. So I know that the terminology of ADHD has only been with us since the 1960s, but a lot of historians have theorized that, some of the greatest minds of, human history may have had ADHD, like Leonardo da Vinci was a well-known procrastinator. His interests and work were scattered across a wide variety of areas. Albert Einstein was reported to have been a very rebellious and inattentive student, but also, an exceptionally creative mind. And he very likely had ADHD, dyslexia, and possibly Asperger's syndrome. Great inventors, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, President John F. Kennedy, and the great composer Mozart, possibly had ADHD as well. Verified diagnoses in modern times include billionaires Bill Gates and Richard Branson, Olympic athletes Simone Biles and Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal. So, the deficit in attention is often sort of, I think, more having to do with others' perception of people that have these traits. We do need support, though. It's not like this. It is a superpower in some ways, but it's not a superpower. Like, we need support. We need to, it's a different way of learning. So we need a different way of being taught, and we need to be inspired in the classroom. And I think that it's a specific kind of support that we can figure out together as teacher and parents and student. And I think we can start off by talking about what way we can get services and interventions to guarantee that that your child gets these kinds of support. So there's two options that we can explore. There's the first one is an IEP, that's an individualized educational plan. The second one is a 504 plan. They're both very similar and very different in different ways, or they're different in different ways. They both guarantee services, and the difference really comes down to whether or not a child needs support outside of the classroom. So that's where the 504 ends. An IEP can give support outside of the classroom, but most of the time an ADHD diagnosis qualifies for a 504 plan. So that's kind of what I would recommend. It's important to understand that ADHD isn't a deficit in attention, and I touched on this a few minutes ago. It has more to do with executive functioning. So executive functioning, as explained on as WebMD, is it includes working memory, cognitive ability, inhibition control. So some of the modifications that would be in the 504 plan would give a little bit of flexibility, like use of computer for written work, a little bit of extra time on tests, but it'll also serve as a reminder to teachers that most of the behavioral issues occur when your child is dysregulated in their executive functioning and their brain has switched over to an emotional state or a survival state, fight or flight. So it's in the executive state that we learn. It's in the executive state that we make rational choices, use restraint, stay organized, commit things to memory. So yeah, I recommend a 504. But as far as how things go in my class, I want you to know that my sensitivity to this is very personal. I have a lot of the same characteristics. My daughter has a lot of the same characteristics. And one of my main reasons for getting into this teaching profession is to make sure that there are people in the classroom for students like I was, and that there's people that are, that want to make kids excited and want to connect and want to make sure that, they don't feel like they're, somehow left behind, or some that don't feel othered in any way. So, yeah, but as far as things go in my class, I want you to know that you have my, you have my contact information. Reach out to me with anything, and together we can stay consistent. We can stay sensitive. We can be helpful to make sure that your child gets everything that they need. So thank you, and I hope we have a great year.